This day in sports history. It's March 16th, and without a doubt, many of you have filled out your tournament brackets already, feeling pretty confident with most of your picks and hoping that a few of those upsets you selected actually happen. Well, on this day, after 33 years of waiting, the ultimate bracket buster happened. I've also got a story about a guy who was destined for greatness, but was struck down well before his prime. And Annika Sorenstam did something that no other woman who's lived on this planet has been able to duplicate. All that, plus a non-sports fun fact about two menacing kids who did not know the other existed. I'll get going right after this.
And that's the end of the first half. As the teams head to the locker room, the Spartans lead the Bulldogs by a score.
You guys stink. Geez, Coach, we're only down a couple of points. No, I mean you guys really smell. You need to hit the showers. And here, I got every one of you new bars of soap from the Sterling Soap Company. Each bar is artisan crafted using natural ingredients and essential oils. They also have shave soaps, colognes, beard balm, and a whole lot more. Now get in there. But Coach, we have another half to play. I don't care. I can't stand to be around you. A few minutes later. All right, bring it in tight. You guys are still playing terrible, but you're smelling great out there. Now listen, you're going to need to stock up for the rest of the season. We got a lot of tough games left. So go to sterlingsoap.com after the game. That's STIRLING soap.com. You got that? Yes, Coach. Great. sterlingsoap.com on 3. 1, 2, 3. sterlingsoap.com. So yesterday, I mentioned that the NCAA tournament field expanded to 64 teams in 1985, with a 16 nearly beating a 1 in that first iteration, when Michigan survived a scare by Fairleigh Dickinson. While there were several close calls, it took 33 years for it to actually happen. On this day in 2018, UMBC was taking on the top team in the country, the Virginia Cavaliers, and leading up to this one, there was not any indication that this would be the day. The Retrievers did not exactly have a long history of NCAA appearances. This was only the second time they'd qualified for the big dance. Their previous trip back in 2008 had been as a 15 seed, and they lost in their first-round matchup with Georgetown by 19. During the 2018 season, they'd only played two power conference teams, Arizona and Maryland, and lost both by 20-plus points. They'd finished second in the America East Conference, but had won their tournament to qualify. Now, on the other side, it was supposed to be a rebuilding year for Virginia, but Coach Tony Bennett had done a masterful job coaching the Cavaliers to a 17-1 conference record, winning the ACC regular season with a 4-game cushion. They were the top-ranked team in the country and had won 23 of their last 24, which included winning the ACC tournament. Virginia went on a little spurt in the first half to take a 6-point lead, but UMBC came back and it was tied at 21 after the first 20 minutes. Out of the break, though, the Retrievers came out firing.
Mora behind the back, Sherburne sets up the long shot, and it's a 6-point lead. Over to Sherburne. Takes it back outside, 3-point shot again. They hit another long-range shot. Lyles.
UMBC hit 12 of their 24 three-point attempts on the afternoon to open up a double-digit lead. Virginia, on the other hand, was a chilly 4 for 22 behind the arc. And as the clock wound down to triple zeros, it was a decisive 20-point win for the Retrievers.
Superlatives, you can't come up with enough. Absolute. Incredible performance. Shock and awe in college basketball. UMBC makes history in Charlotte.
Jarius Lyles led the way with 28. There was a special connection for Retrievers head coach Ryan Odom. Ryan is the son of Dave Odom, who was a longtime assistant under Terry Holland at Virginia and had distinct memories of when his dad coached in Charlottesville. And of course, Ryan is now the current head coach at Virginia. Let's go back to 1980 for an NCAA tournament matchup between the eventual national champions and a team that many thought had a legitimate shot at one. For those that actually play the game, the objective is pretty simple: win and advance. For those of us who watch, we want to be entertained while watching our team win and advance. The 1980 Louisville Cardinals were one of the most entertaining teams in college basketball, with the Doctors of Dunk led by Dr. Dunkenstein himself, Daryl Griffith. Griffith was the National Player of the Year in 1980, and on this day, the Cardinals were playing an Elite Eight game against the #1 seed from the Midwest region and third-ranked team in the country, the LSU Tigers. It was supposed to be a close game, especially after the Cardinals had been pushed to back-to-back overtime games in the round of 32 and the Sweet 16. But on this day, the Cardinals unleashed a dunk fest on LSU.
Blocked by Ponzo Wright. Batted ahead by Bergman. Here we go! Here we go! He had his moment. Billy doesn't like that.
Daryl Griffith slams one in, and it's a 12-point lead for Louisville as Dr. Dunkenstein performs.
And just like Dick Pepperfield in the movie Semi-Pro struggling to come up with words to describe the alley-oop, Dick Enberg had no words to describe Griffith's dunk that was known as the Round the World. But his teammates sure knew what it was. In fact, in the timeout that followed shortly after that play, Cardinal players snuck over to NBC's broadcast location to take a peek at the replay of that dunk. Griffith had 17 points in only 18 minutes of action, and Louisville rolled to the 86-66 win. And still, nearly 50 years later, Griffith is the all-time leading scorer in Louisville basketball history. And with the current state of college basketball and college athletics overall, that is likely to never change. On this day in 1958, basketball player Maurice Stokes collapsed on the plane ride home after a game, and he never played again. The Cincinnati Royals had just lost 100-83 to the Detroit Pistons. It was the first in their postseason best-of-3 playoff series with Detroit. Cincinnati's Maurice Stokes scored 12 points and grabbed 15 rebounds in that game. The 6'7", 240-pound Stokes was only in his third year as a professional, but he'd already established himself as a force in the paint and on the boards. He averaged 17 rebounds a game in his career, and guys who played with him or against him said if given the chance to play out his career, the name Maurice Stokes would have been a top 50 all-time guy. A name that could be dropped with the likes of Bill Russell or Elvin Hayes. Boston Celtic great Bob Cousy called Stokes the first great athletic power forward. He was Karl Malone with more finesse. Stokes had been one of the NBA's best. In his pro debut, he scored 32, pulled 20 rebounds, and handed out 8 assists. He went on to win Rookie of the Year in 1955. He was an all-star every year he was in the NBA. He led the league in rebounds in his second year, and he was among the league leaders in assists. If only he'd been given the chance to play out his career is one of those great what-ifs in sports. Instead, on this day, tragedy struck. The team boarded a plane for their short return flight to Cincinnati in preparation for Game 2 the following night. Shortly after takeoff, Stokes collapsed and he had a seizure. He was rushed to a hospital after landing. The seizure was determined to be caused by post-traumatic encephalopathy from an incident 3 nights prior on March 12th. In that final regular season game against the Minneapolis Lakers, he had fallen to the floor and was knocked unconscious after hitting his head. The seizure on the plane ride home on the 16th left him paralyzed and with permanent brain damage. Stokes' teammate, Jack Twyman, stepped in as his caretaker, helping raise money for his medical expenses and his daily care, and eventually became his legal guardian. Stokes learned how to type again, and he was able to communicate a little bit. He became an inspiration to many by keeping his good humor and attitude despite his unfortunate circumstance until his death in 1970 at the age of 36 due to complications from the seizure that occurred on this day. He was posthumously inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame in 2004, with Twyman delivering his induction speech, choosing not to talk about his basketball talent, but instead Stokes the man and how he approached life each and every day for the remainder of his short life.
It was amazing, and never, ever in the 12 years did I ever see him depressed or angry or why me or how did this happen. He looked forward to the new day every day, and he was an amazing person, and it was an unbelievable opportunity for me to be exposed to this man and to see what he was made of. And as Wayne said in his piece, he inspired everybody that came in contact with him.
On this day in 1974, the Oakland A's signed Herb Washington to their roster. Never heard of him? Well, there is probably a reason for that. Herb Washington was not really a baseball player. I mean, he may have played a little bit back in high school, but he was a track and field star. He was a world-class sprinter, and he holds the distinction as the man at the top of a really obscure list. Before moving forward, what you should know is that Washington was really, really fast, and so A's owner Charlie Finley signed him to be a pinch runner and steal bases. In 1974, Washington appeared in 92 games, stealing 29 bases and scoring 29 times. His 29 base swipes was good for 7th best in the American League, but he was caught stealing 16 times. A base-stealing blunder in the '74 World Series may have been the beginning of the end for him. After being substituted as a pinch runner for Joe Rudy in Game 2 and representing the tying run on first, he wandered a bit too far from the base and he was picked off. The A's lost that game, but they eventually won the series for their third consecutive World Series title. He did come back in 1975 and appeared in another 13 games with 2 stolen bases, but was released soon after, replaced by another speedy player, but one who could actually play in the field and take some swings at the plate. So here is Washington's distinction. He is the only major league non-pitcher to play in at least 100 games and never have an at-bat. One other interesting fact about Washington, his 1974 contract had a clause in it that he had to grow facial hair, which he actually struggles to do. He used an eyebrow pencil to add in more and to satisfy this weird contractual obligation. So, why was this in his contract, you might ask? Well, the only reason I found for that clause is that Reggie Jackson showed up to spring training with a handlebar mustache. Finley, thinking Jackson was doing it as an attention grabber for himself, paid players extra or mandated it in their contracts to grow facial hair so Jackson would not stand out in an era when facial hair on ball players was mostly discouraged. In fact, the A's became known as the Mustache Gang because of Finley's strange efforts. On this day in 1975, Jack Nicklaus won the Doral Eastern Open without a pitching wedge in his bag for nearly half his round. Nicklaus was warming up on the range prior to his round, and he was working on his short game with his wedge when the head of the club separated from the shaft and went flying down the range. The broken piece was retrieved, and a friend of his went to work on it with what at the time was called fast-drying glue to repair the club. The epoxy had to dry for a few hours, and it was finally returned to Nicklaus's bag at the 7th. He used a variety of clubs on the few times he needed the wedge on the front 9. He capped the day not with a wedge, but with a 3-iron from a divot on the 18th fairway to about 20 feet. He rolled that in for birdie for a 3-shot win. He had a new wedge in his bag by the time he showed up in Augusta for his classic duel with Johnny Miller a few weeks later. On this day in 2001, Annika Sorenstam became the first women's golfer to shoot a 59 during an event. It was the second round of the Standard Register Ping at Moon Valley Country Club in Phoenix. She birdied the first 8 holes on the day, and at that point, the nerves started to fray.
And you can imagine, talk about being nervous. I mean, talk about sweaty palms and just, really feeling it. And I remember turning to my caddy, and I don't know why I did it, but I did at the time, and I said, I am so nervous, I just have to make par now.
She did par number 9, and strangely, that calmed her down. So she got back on the birdie train at 10 and birdied 4 in a row to get to 12 under for the day. She finished the afternoon on the 6,500-yard par 72 course with 13 birdies and 5 pars. She actually had a legit chance at a 58, but rolled her 10-foot birdie putt on 18 just past the hole and tapped in for another par. Sorenstam's 59 was 2 shots better than the previous LPGA low round of 61, shot by Kari Webb and Sayri Pak. Sorenstam is still the only woman to ever go sub-60. And on this day in 1964, Detroit defensive lineman Alex Karras and Green Bay Packer running back Paul Hornung were reinstated by the NFL after serving an 11-month suspension for gambling on football. These two were two of the league's best. Hornung was the 1961 MVP, and Karras was an All-Pro. Commissioner Pete Rozelle suspended the pair in April of 1963 for betting on football games. Hornung says his bets were with friends and never exceeded $200, but Rozelle said he had found evidence of $500 wagers on NFL games between 1959 and 61. Karras was found to have made at least 6 bets between $50 and $100 on NFL games. 5 other Lions were also fined $2,000 by the league for betting on the 1962 title game between New York and Green Bay, but those were not suspended. Hornung would go on to be elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1986. Karras would also become more well-known in the 80s as the TV dad on the sitcom Webster. And time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. On the same day in March 1951, 2 completely different and independent versions of Dennis the Menace debuted on comic pages, one in the UK and the other in the US. Hank Ketchum drew a blonde-headed kid in a striped shirt who tormented Mr. Wilson here in the States, and David Law drew a black-haired boy in a striped shirt who tormented everybody in Scotland. The two were not aware of each other, and neither was concerned about copyright infringement, and they are both still being published. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.